Hello and welcome to the Powerful African Women, the POW podcast.
The podcast to empower the POW in you.
I'm Aisha.
And I am Saron.
And today we're going to discuss with our guest Aisha on her path towards shaping the POW within her.
And we'll discuss on her identities and dreams and how she embraced them.
We'll introduce the topic,
share experiences and argue our points of view.
At the end of the podcast, we'll give our recommendations. So stay tuned
and listen.
Hello everyone, we hope you're doing very well and that you're finding a way to enjoy your summer safely.
So we have the next August reading, which is going to be So Long a Letter in English, and then in French it's going to be Une si longue lettre. So we're really excited for this book. I know Aisha too loves it, so definitely it's going to be a great book club for the August one.
Presenting our guest. Hello to our guest. Now it's time to present yourself by bringing out the POW in you. I'm going to ask you 5 identification questions and you just have to simply answer.
Okay.
So my first question for our guest is, could you please give us your POW identification? That is, how would you like us to call you throughout the podcast?
I would like to be called Aisha, simply.
All right, Aisha. This is actually our second Aisha. So welcome. Second question. What is your POW country or countries of identification? That is the countries you most highly identify to.
I would say my POW countries are firstly Nigeria, because I am originally from Nigeria. Secondly, Senegal and Gambia, because my parents named me Aissatou Janki, which is a Senegalese name. And thirdly, Ghana, because I lived in Ghana for a year while studying for my A-level exam. So yeah.
All right. Third question. What is your POW goal? That is, what would you like to achieve ultimately?
Ultimately, I want to work towards being a voice for the voiceless and just kind of like be that light that inspires, motivates, enlightens, empowers other women, other Black people, other Black Africans like me, and sort of just like makes them to see reasons why they can also be whoever they want to be, regardless of where they're coming from.
Okay, that's a huge goal. Fourth question. What is your academic path or your career if you have started working?
I am currently studying towards an undergraduate architecture degree. I am studying my MA Hons Architecture at the University of Edinburgh, which is located in Scotland, United Kingdom. Yeah, essentially, I'm just working towards being a fully registered architect, most likely in the UK and ultimately back home as well.
And fifth question, because POW is also about having fun. What are your hobbies or what do you like to do with your free time?
In my free time, I dance a lot. I listen to African music, Afrobeats to be precise, and aside from dancing, I love to sing, or you would find me just doing something artsy. I could be painting, I could be drawing, I could be sketching. Yeah, just something along those lines.
So thank you for answering those questions. Now we're going to play a little game. So it's called the Fireside Chat. And I'm just going to ask you a few quick questions and you just have to answer quick and give us a 30-second explanation about, why you chose that answer. So the first question is going to be Lagos or Edinburgh.
For me, it has to be Edinburgh, because I fell in love with the city. And Lagos, on the other hand, I haven't really lived the Lagos life.
Okay, that makes sense. So second question is going to be jollof rice or egusi soup.
Why will you compare jollof rice with egusi soup? You know it's always going to be jollof rice. Like, it just has to be jollof rice or nothing else, please.
Okay, so third question, Burna Boy or Davido?
Davido! It just has to be Davido. Davido is actually from the same village as myself.
Okay, so fourth question, Chimamanda or Chinua Achebe?
Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
Oh, wow. Okay, that was really quick. She's like, no explanation needed. Okay, and then last question, that's kind of like an open up, ended question. I just asked, so if you could live anywhere in the world except Edinburgh or anywhere in Nigeria, where would it be?
Spain? Yeah, I'm kind of low-key really, really enthusiastic about the whole Spanish language and the Spanish culture. And I would really, really love to live in Spain.
discussing the topic. So now it's time to start our discussion, the real core of the podcast. So we're going to divide it in two sections. The first one is going to be about your success story, where you're going to talk us through your path towards shaping the power within you.
And then we'll move to your choice of topic, hashtag your dreams and hashtag your identity are valid too. So basically here, I'm just going to say why Aisha, like why we chose you for this 9th edition. So actually I ran through like one of our posts on LinkedIn that was liked by one of my connections. I actually don't even remember that person. But anyways, so like the post was about being an African woman and being an aspiring architect. So I have the post here, which is what I'm going to read for a little bit. The post was saying, I am a Black Muslim woman in architecture, and this is my story. Growing up as a child in northern Nigeria, I was fascinated by the art of making, and soon I discovered architecture was the closest to what I had imagined, and so I decided at the age of 13 that I wanted to become an architect. I was advised against the profession, saying it was not meant for a woman, or that as a Muslim woman, it was just not the ideal representation of what the society expects of me. But I was stubborn, and I ignored every single comment. I managed to secure a full-funded scholarship to study architecture at a top-ranked university, the University of Edinburgh. What I'm trying to get to here is that no matter your background, your ethnicity, your race, or even your religion, your dreams are valid too. Just keep your eyes on the prize and persevere. Seek help when you need and ask lots of questions. Believe in your vision and work hard at it. And trust me, you could be just another Aisha, just dare to dream. Hashtag your dreams are valid too. Hashtag diversity, hashtag inclusion, hashtag architecture, hashtag Black women. So welcome Aisha.
Thank you for such a warm welcome.
So this leads us to our first question. Why this post, Aisha? Why did you feel that your story needed to be heard? You got almost 9,000 likes on that post, which is huge. And why did you feel that you had to show that hashtag your dreams are valid too?
Okay, so I'm just trying to go back to when I actually wrote that post. On that fateful day, I went on Google and I was just doing a bit of research about architecture, and I looked up Black architects in the UK, and it was just like some articles that were highlighting Black people in the architecture field in the UK. However, what shook me was the fact that there wasn't anyone that kind of like identified as a Black Muslim woman. And that was when I realized that in as much as I'm a Black person, right, and I'm a Black woman, that on its own already is an outlier. That like those identities are already like kind of on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of representation in the field of architecture. I feel like I had mixed feelings at that point. On one hand, I am quite lucky to be here regardless of the fact that, there's just such few numbers of people like me. And at the same time, I felt like if Black people, if women find it hard in like being minorities, I am gonna find it even harder because I'm Black, I'm Muslim, I'm a woman. And so I was like, okay, what do I do? That was when I basically remembered that quote that said, you should be the change you want to be in the world. And so I went on LinkedIn and I literally changed my headline. So at that point, I was like, no, people need to know that there are people like me in the field of architecture and we're doing just fine, I just wrote how I felt and I just made the post and I went to sleep. I wake up and there's like so much comment. There's so many comments. There's so many likes, so many shares. I was just like shook by the amount of support that I received, by how many people resonated with that story that I shared.
Yes. For me, I just have a question. It's like, we see you like you're very lively, very excited. So I just wanted to know, did you have like any role models, into kind of inspiring you to become, that aspiring architect, or just that philanthropist, or that person who just wants to, inspire others?
I would go back to like the foundation of social world. Like my family is kind of like a huge part of where I got this whole package that you see from. My mom is an African woman. She is proudly Nigerian. She is an entrepreneur. She has like 7 children. She is a graduate. She went to school.
Nice.
Wow.
My dad, on the other hand, is a chemical engineer. Like I saw people around me who were confident, even though they had to kick down doors to get to where they were still killing it, and they didn't make me feel like there was a limit to how much I could do. There was a limit to who I could be. And I guess that's where my confidence kind of comes from.
Okay, so your parents. And can you maybe quote like other role models that you might have?
Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
Right.
I love that woman.
Yes.
I am also inspired by architect Zaha Hadid.
I heard of her.
I am also inspired by architect Olajumoke Adenowo. She is a Nigerian architect.
Nice.
She's actually Yoruba, like me. So my dad kept going on and on about her. He downloaded articles about her. And she was one of those people that I looked up to that gave me a reason to keep pursuing my goal of being an architect, you know?
Nice.
Okay, so third question. As you were saying in your LinkedIn post, you're a Muslim, you're an African, and you're a woman, right? Could you maybe explain or show us what challenges you encountered in Nigeria compared to the challenges you had to face in the UK as a woman first?
I would first of all like to say that just speaking a bit more about context of back home and what it was like growing up for me. As a woman, I was made to feel like I was less than the male gender. And, you know, people use religion as a justification for this whole wrong stereotype that women are inferior to men, you know. And now I'm thinking about that and I'm like, could that also be the reason why my brothers could get away with things that I couldn't get away with? Could that be the reason why my brothers would be watching TV and I'll have to stay with mom in the kitchen? That was really hard for me to kind of understand. However, in the context of the UK, like when I came here, I definitely noticed a stark difference, you know. On the media, feminism is kind of a known concept. I noticed there were more females studying architecture. Like I wasn't the only female. Like there was kind of like an equal representation of men and women in my classroom. Whereas back home, like I was being told I would be one of the 3 out of 100 studying architecture, you know. In as much as the UK isn't perfect, you know, there's still patriarchy and you still find that there isn't enough representation of women making decision at the table, you know. I definitely noticed there was kind of like a huge difference. Like back home, we're still fighting rape, we're still fighting sexual assault, we're still fighting patriarchy, we're still fighting many things that's kind of deeply rooted in the culture, which needs to be spoken about, you know.
Now, same question, maybe compare the two contexts as a Black African.
As a Black African, I think coming here, like, I was a minority and it was really strange being the only Black person in the room or being the only Black African, to be precise, in the room. It was definitely really, really strange because I'm coming from a place where like we're literally like 99% of the people around me are Black Africans, you know, and sometimes I walk past people and I'll say hi to them and I'll try to speak to them, but I'll notice the fact that, oh, they can't quite understand where I'm coming from because they are not necessarily Black Africans. So they could be Black Americans or Black British or Black Canadian or something, but they are not Black Africans. Even in the classroom as well, when interacting with people from the African and Caribbean society in my university, it was really different.
Did you feel like, because back in Ghana and in Nigeria, you were like an African, so you didn't even think about being Black, but when you came to the UK, and because now when you were talking about the others around you, you're talking about the Blacks. So maybe did you feel that you switched from being an African to being part of the group that is called the Blacks?
100%. Oh my days. Like, as I crossed that border, that invisible border between Africa and United Kingdom, I was just suddenly like, my identity changed completely. I wasn't seen as that Yoruba girl from Nigeria. I was now seen as this Black girl or this Muslim girl or this woman, you know? Like suddenly my identity mattered.
And the last question that is still comparing your situation in Nigeria and in the UK, how did you feel as a Muslim wearing the veil?
As a Muslim wearing the hijab, it's funny because personally, I actually haven't really experienced any sort of hate speech whatsoever. But I became much more aware about the fact that I am wearing the veil and the fact that, you know, I am different. And I went through that whole process of like even questioning my identity and my faith and my belief. And I vividly remember joining a society called the Islamic Society, trying to find spaces where I could find people like me, you know.
So do you think your experience will be really different if you were not wearing the hijab? Like,
I would say a firm yes. Definitely. As a Muslim woman, most of us wear the hijab. And that for me is like a huge form of my identity. There will be times when, you know, I feel like people already have a preconceived notion about who I should be because I'm wearing that hijab. I just want people to listen to me speak before they see my face.
Yeah.
I want people to listen to what I have to say before they see the fact that, oh, she's actually a Muslim and she's actually wearing the hijab. Oh, and she's actually a person of color. She is black, you know?
Thank you. So final question will be like, so just give us maybe an explanation on, you know, how you're kind of using your LinkedIn platform, you know, to influence other women or just others in general into fulfilling their dreams.
Because you're publishing at least once a week or twice a week videos on LinkedIn on specific topic just to bring joy to people, but also to make people still believe in themselves. You make some posts. Sarah read one of the posts, but you made other ones. Maybe you could explain how you're leveraging this tool that is LinkedIn and your personality to bring something to people.
Okay, so essentially, like right after I made that post that Sarah read out, I got a massive amount of support. You know, people were coming out in the comment section saying that they faced quite a similar challenge as myself. People were telling me that I should keep going, that I shouldn't stop. It was then that I made that decision to kind of like do more on LinkedIn, because before that I wasn't really doing anything, you know. Like I would post my job updates, and so I started off by just like sharing like videos on principles that make me. That's the title of the series, and it is essentially like 10 videos that I shared speaking about principles that have really pushed me to be where I am today. And so that's kind of been what my LinkedIn profile has been about.
Yes. And I love that you're doing that, because by those videos, by those posts, you are inspiring so many people. And you're young. I mean, you're 18, right? People are not going to believe that. Yes. She's only 18 and she's done so much. Thank you for doing that, Aisha. This was a very interesting interview, and we got the chance to explore the topic of your identity, but also your dreams. And that's actually the social topic that you've chosen. So your identities are valid too, and your dreams are valid too. My first question is, why did you choose this topic?
Simply put, the reason why I chose this topic is because like I felt like I couldn't be the person that I was and have the dreams that I had as a child, because the world made it to seem as if people told me many times that I couldn't be an architect because I'm a Black Muslim woman. I feel like people are being told they cannot do many things, and I basically just wanted people to know that there is nothing wrong with wanting to be an engineer and an architect. There's nothing wrong with your dream. You know, there's nothing wrong with the identities that make you. There is nothing wrong with being a woman. There's nothing wrong with your skin color, and you can do anything you want to do.
Yes, that is very important, and I feel like our POW network really need to believe in that. This is actually one of our goals, you know, to make everyone feels like even by being an outlier, they can succeed. So that actually leads us to our main topic, that is how being an outlier could be a blessing or a curse depending on how you look at it. This is a thought you have. This is something you wanted to share with our network. Could you explain why?
I will first of all start by speaking on how being an outlier could be a curse. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It is hard. As some of you may know already, I currently 18 years old. And by the time that I left home to study in Ghana for my A-levels, I was just 15 years old. In the context of Nigeria, where I'm coming from, it's kind of normal for someone to be young and in university.
You were 15 when you finished high school?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
I finished writing my WAEC exam, my West African Examination Council exam, by the age of 15. And I went to Ghana right after that to study for my A-levels. And I was basically like put amongst women from across the African continent that have got ambitious goals of getting into the STEM field. STEM as in science, technology, engineering, and maths. And obviously, they were older than me because I was only 15 years old. And so I feel like the way that ended up becoming a curse for me is majority of the time I was made to feel like I didn't know enough. Sometimes they would talk about some issues and they wouldn't necessarily like think to ask me for my opinion because to them I'm just a kid. It was really hard as well because like after then I then moved to the UK. I got on the plane. I was how old was I? I was 16 years old and I got on the plane. I flew to the UK by myself and I had to like start living the adult life at the age of 16, you know?
I actually get it because I skipped a grade when I was really young. I was like maybe 6 years old. I think it was around that age that I felt that it was a curse because I had to adapt to people. I know I was like late in terms of, I don't know, physical development, you know, for instance, those kind of stuff. But it was a bit of a curse, yes, because I had to adapt to a new environment very quickly. But the thing is, I was really young and I quickly adapt and I just grew up at the same level as the rest of the people because it happened when I was young.
So I just want to point out that like I am grateful that I was the youngest, you know, because that meant that I kind of got mature a bit earlier, you know.
I want to ask you something because I had the same feeling, but I feel like due to the fact that you were younger, that you had some kind of outlying effect because of that age, these challenges kind of shaped your personality. You are able to face more adversity and more challenges because you already had to shape that one.
Definitely. And that brings me to the second point, which is how being an outlier is actually a blessing, right? Because of all the adversities being an outlier makes you face, because of all the baggage that the world throws at you simply because you were born different or you think different or you look different, it really makes you, I know this is a bit cliche, but you kind of develop a thick skin. You know, like people say things to you and you're just like, can you say something new? I've already heard that one before. Or people try to deliberately bring you down, but you've already trained yourself to bring yourself up and to carry yourself up.
Since, I mean, you're kind of used to be an outlier for a while, you use, you know, to, I mean, you know how to react to certain environments and to certain actions. Like for you, you've always been the youngest since since Nigeria, like you've had different experiences based on, you know, being an outlier in Ghana and also being an outlier in, you know, in Edinburgh. So it's kind of like you going through those different experiences made you just the person that you are. And it made you like more resilient. And it made you just like kind of face certain situations that other people would maybe take it, you know, in a different or like in a harder approach. You take it on a more acceptable approach because you kind of know what you've been going through. And yeah, I think just in that level, you can definitely say that being an outlier, it's kind of a blessing because you just, like you said, you can develop tough skin and you just develop that go-getter attitude. Like you don't let people talk you down.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to add, based on what Sarah you say, is that to our listener, I would recommend a book that was written by Malcolm Gladwell that is called Outliers, The Story of Success. Basically, in this book, he's asking the question, why do some people succeed living remarkably productive and impactful lives while so many more never reach their potential? So to answer to that question, he examines the life of outliers from Mozart to Bill Gates, talking about, for instance, Oprah Winfrey. Right. She's totally an outlier because she's black, she's a woman, she lives in, she tried to succeed in the US, which is really hard, But what I want to put an emphasis on is I feel like being an outlier can also be a blessing due to the fact that when you succeed 10 times better than another one. If Oprah Winfrey has been white and a woman, I feel like she wouldn't have succeeded as much as she succeeded. Why?
Definitely.
First, because she needed to fight like 10 times more than anyone, so she was tougher, as you were saying, but also due to the fact that because she was an outlier, she gained some kind of visibility because of the fact that she was out of the norm, and that's what makes her succeed more. So the blessing can be actually double. First, you make yourself tougher, but also the second thing, and I think it's an important factor, is what he called in his book chance, but I feel like it's the context. If you weren't an outlier, you wouldn't have succeeded as much just because, I mean, you're normal.
But I think for Oprah, it's also kind of different because you cannot fully call her an outlier in the sense where there are so many other people like her trying to make it, right? As Black women in the US, in the, television department, or like the television industry. I think for her, it's just that she was an outlier because the industry made her look like an outlier.
You're right.
That's, I think, the difference. Like,
because it's based on their norms.
Yeah,
exactly. But there are so many people who are trying to make it and they are not given that opportunity. It's just that she really had that go-getter attitude, or maybe she had different things that made her more successful or more attractive, to the industry. But for her, it's like, it's whenever she got successful, now she was looked more as an outlier. But she was just one of 10,000 other women who wanted to make it.
So maybe sometime when the industry and people are defining you as an outlier, we need to take into account the fact that it's based on their own norms. So the norm today is being white, a man, and, from a developed country, that's the norm. And sometimes, because when you say you feel like an outlier, I feel like you feel like an outlier based on their norms. So we need to be stronger in our mind, thinking that we are not different from the norm, but maybe trying to push ourselves to excel in our own group and normal group. So maybe instead of defining yourself as being an outlier, you should define yourself as trying to be an excellent Black, African, and Muslim woman. So an excellent version of your identity.
But being an outlier, it's also, part of your identity, because like the way you guys talked about age, me, that was the same thing with like in my promotion. I was really the only Black African like in my class on my whole chemical engineering promotion, that's also some type of outliers. And it's like you being into that area or like into that environment, it just, again, it develops some type of skills that not everybody has. And that's what Aisha said, it's both a blessing or a curse, because you feel like you can be alone, people don't relate to you, but at the same time you really just develop those skills that are useful in the future. And sometimes that's also what attracts companies or just people in general to listen to your story, because they know that you don't have the same story as anybody else.
Yeah, I was just going to sort of support all the points that you all have mentioned. Being an outlier is a blessing, okay? Because there is nothing wrong with being different, and there is nothing wrong with standing out from the crowd or choosing to take a totally different path from everyone else, because that just means you're going to be a pace setter. You're going to set a benchmark which other people could try to follow. You're going to inspire other people to do the same, We cannot try to measure our success based on theirs, because it's two different spectrums.
It's their own norms, and everyone should live around his or her own system of norms and shouldn't compare that much to the other.
I mean, we have to break free, we have to do all these things, but at the same time, why do we come here? In the sense where we always seek into coming into, the Europe to get the best education and all that. So us coming here, we already know that we are going to be exposed to this kind of attitude, if it makes sense. So we have to develop our own norms, but also it's like we just have to, first of all, maybe raise awareness on like how things should be done to, us outliers, maybe not to make us feel a certain way, but it could be hard. I think it could be just hard to develop our own norms.
I think, what we are all saying kind of sums up very well the main idea of our quick talk, but very interesting talk on identity and dreams. Just wanted to add, if you had one key thing to be taken out of all our conversation, what would it be? So Aisha, I'm gonna let you start.
The final thing that I just want to say is, what if I basically, if I didn't choose to be an outlier? What if I wasn't stubborn? And what if I didn't like look outside of my comfort zone and pursue my dreams and everything? And simply like, I just wouldn't be this person you guys are speaking with today. I wouldn't even be talking with Sarah and Aisha too, you know? And I just want to stress on the fact that, you know, I am where I am today because of my dreams and my identities. And do not give up on your dream because of your identity, because your identity is your strength. It is your story. It is your unique story, and there's nothing that's going to change that fact. So just hold on to what you believe, hold on to who you are, and the world can change its heart. You don't have to change a thing about you.
Yeah. I think for me, it's, again, just embrace it. Like, it will give, you know, strength, and it will give different skills that are going to be useful in the future. Like resiliency, adaptability. As much as it is hard, it's something we should just embrace and then really just make the most out of it.
Me, I would say you could live your life following a path that was defined for you and that was built for you by your culture, by other people and all. But don't be afraid to try to deviate maybe from that path and try to be an even better version of yourself. And if you are an outlier, if you are in a context where you kind of feel that, oh, I don't correspond to the norm, it shouldn't be your main issue. Use this challenging, use all the things you've learned from being outside of that norm to build yourself and build a better version of yourself and be excellent in whatever you want to do. That's it for our talk. Thank you, Aisha. Thank you, Saron. We're gonna quickly move to our last part. There is the recommendation. Our recommendations. My recommendation for this month is a podcast. It's called My African Cliché. So it's a podcast in French and a podcast in English. So it's the same podcast in both languages. And it's very interesting because it gives you a glance on some historical facts or historical event. I would highly recommend the episode on Maria Maba and on Waume Maatai, who is a feminist. And I think she's from Kenya. And well, I recommend the entire podcast.
For my recommendation, I will recommend a book. It's called Les Routes de Pékin. So it's French. That's the one that I know in French. In English, it translates to The Roads of Peking, but I don't know if that's the actual translation. But the point is, the book is made by Paulo Suliza, which is a French author. And it's really interesting because it just talks about a journalist and a publisher who fall in love, but they also have kind of like different paths, and they're trying to cross them and see kind of if their love story will work. That just has been one of my favorite books ever, and I thought you guys could like it.
And last but not least,
for me, I've got a podcast that I want to recommend. It's titled Pierre Os Ro, and it is by this woman. Her name is Sarah Porritt, and she basically invites other women doing amazing things from around the world, and she basically like invites them to share their stories, to speak about how their experiences are different because of their identities, and just speak about how they're navigating this world while still doing amazing things.
All right, so I think we can add another recommendation. So it's actually, I highly recommend to people to follow Aisha on social media and particularly on LinkedIn. Her LinkedIn account is Aisha Junkie Akiola. Follow her, watch her video, share her livelihood, if I could say that. But definitely follow her. And well, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Aisha, for accepting to be our guest and giving us such a lively podcast again. You can reach out to us and follow us on social media. We are as POW, are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, under Powerful African Women.
You can also check our website. So now it's powerfulafricanwomen.com to see what we are up to.
And give us your opinion, your suggestions, or your comments.
And you can share as much as you want about the power in your entourage in order to strengthen the network.
And do not forget to bring out the power in you.